Time passes, time passes. Landscape changes. People arrive in what is now Gower. The land is open grassland. Great herds sweep across from horizon to horizon. We follow them. The year is 31,000 BC.
I am the hunter. My name has been forgotten, but they now call me the Red Lady of Paveland. But I am actually a man. And although I am very young, I hunt the mammoth across the plains before the great waters flooded it and surrounded your land. I moved with the herds and followed them north, and it is here I died. My family carried me to the cave called Goat's Hole. They buried me with the bones of the beast I hunted. They covered me in red ochre, sacred to us. They gave me a shell necklace, and it is here I have slept across oceans of time.
Time passes, landscape changes. The ice comes. A long age passes. The ice retreats. The year is 12,500 BC.
My father is a hunter. He uses his spear well. We follow the reindeer over the icy plains. They are very important to us. I pick these animals we owe our lives to deep in the cave you now call Cat's Hole. In the flickering firelight, it comes alive.
Time passes, landscape changes. A great forest grows across the land. Time passes. The woodland retreats because of man's axe of stone. The year is 3000 BC. I am the farmer. I work the land and herd our animals. I know soil, earth and stone. I know the stars and the seasons and when to reap and sow. I build houses of stone to honor our ancestors. They live in our memories as they work the same soil before us. This is our land. The Giants of Giant's Grave.
A long, long time ago, 40 giants came to Gower and settled in Greencombe Valley. It is said they were taller than the tallest trees and older than the oldest oaks.
At first, the giants didn't trouble anyone. They cleared the forest and had a comfortable life as farmers. However, the people of Gower started getting annoyed and frustrated. They were hunter-gatherers, but the giants grabbed all the food in the area.
Another problem was the giants were so heavy their great weight deepened the valley floor and forced the river to go underground. Over time, the giants became fat and lazy and too weak to hunt.
The much smaller locals had become good farmers. They built settlements and hill forts to protect their food and belongings.
The hungry giants began stealing and destroying the forts. They caused chaos!
One cold moonlit night, the wise men of the tribe plotted a way to get rid of the giants. The first part of their plan was to attract the giants with the smell of roasting meat. The smell wafted down the valley until it reached the noses of the hungry giants.
The 40 giants gathered and began galumphing awkwardly through the dark shadows of the trees. They were led by the enticing smell of the roast meat, irresistible to the now starving giants. They were weak-limbed and their poor eyesight kept them cautious and slow, but they stomped heavily on.
The locals' plan depended on the giants reaching the fire at dawn. At this time, the bright sun of the winter solstice would shine brightly, dazzling and confusing the giants. At this moment, the locals would strike. They positioned themselves high on the slopes of the valley.
Just as dawn broke, they put their plan into action. The great rocks rolled down the slopes, catching the giants unaware. More and more hurtled down the valley, The giants were picked off one by one. The blows were not enough to kill the giants, but they were each sent into a deep and some say magical sleep.
Quickly, they were buried in the tomb in Parc Les Brios.
Years later, in Victorian times, the grave was discovered containing 39 bodies. What happened to the 40th? It is said that a creature roams the woods and that you can sometimes hear its low, lonely grumbling and the thump, thump, thump of its feet.
Time passes, landscape changes. The mists are many and the summer short. The year is 500 BC.
Cat story. Cat like the icy east wind, it made his lips tingle as it raced past, breathing the new leaves of spring. Happy, he stopped and lingered a while, breathing in each twist and turn of the valley below, his eyes following the river to the sea. The hawthorn edging the forest bristled, and a rising warmth in his feet kindled a new fire in his heart. Full with energy and a growing light, his mind filled with thoughts of the Mayflower, and he imagined its snowy bloom amongst the hair of his beloved. The spring imbolc had brought colour and feasting and many a pretty face, but the promise of his sword excited him most. It had been Ket's fortune to be fostered by the king of his tribe, and it was his fate to be proud and bold, a warrior. On this particular morning, he was walking through the woods that he would hunt. It was not long until he noticed a woman, strong and tall, older than himself. Her fair hair and painted lips struck him, stark against the frost of the early dawn. Ket stood and watched her move fluidly amongst the trees until he became aware of a whispering within them. He turned suddenly and observed a hawk watching him. He held its eyes for a moment, intent on its curious expression, when suddenly it fell dead at his feet. Mesmerized, Ket saw that its feathers responded to the wind, caressing its lifeless body, which lay still and motionless. Looking up, a girl now stood before him. Ket considered that it was the woman who he had seen before, but there before him stood a girl. She had the same bearing of a woman who had moved so freely amongst the trees, but she radiated something new and fragile. She held the bird in two hands, and trails of luminescent hair blew about her. The longest tendrils were stained red with the blood of the hawk. Pouring through her elegant fingers, blood fell to the ground below. From pure red sprung white meadows, sweet in great circles around them. Its delicate flowers filled him with hope and purpose. There was a change. The wind had gone, and the stillness and calm became an energy transforming the girl. She had had no color, but now became white and gold. Ket himself is said to have spoken of a moment of intense magic.
It was not her eyes that held me, but her silent beauty and scent of her flowers. Her mouth moved and I shook as I felt the words and song fill my head. A golden silken cloth fell about her shoulders in loose waves where the sun anointed her skin, highlighting and swathing a now majestic form. Shining hair flew wild and red as flame, framing her face, and around her neck was a great torque, broken at her throat. Here I glimpsed a space that spun with stars and moons, and I fought an urge to look beyond. The light increased, and the vision became shapes, circles, spirals, and birds.
At that moment, Ket saw the sun, still low, resting on the jagged prongs of the three cliffs, almost as though it had stuck there, bearing down on the cold earth and valley. Reaching down, Ket picked up the hawk and placed it with care upon the fresh ground, covering its corpse with delicate flowers. The ground was hard. The oak bore stains of red touched by her hair. Motionless, Ket watched the dawn finally break and the tension was released, leaving him cold and in need of sleep. Upon awakening, Ket found within himself a new understanding and a wonder of poetry and story. Ket became a druid, and his judgment and lyrical story guided and instructed his tribe of Cilios on Penmain. He was remembered for his poetry, which was full of light, hope, magic, and beauty.
Time passes, landscape changes. A great army from the south arrives on our shores. They come from the eternal city of Rome. The year is 43 AD. Time passes, landscape changes. The soldiers from the south have gone, but behind they leave smoke of incense. A faith. The year is 545 AD.
I am a saint. My name is Kenneth. The people say I was shipwrecked and fed by the seagulls. I spread the word of the preacher from Nazareth, the boy born in Bethlehem. I live in isolation, but my world is rich in thoughts and prayer on Bury Home. My purpose is greater than myself, and the word of Jesus will change the people of Gower, where many Celtic saints like Tylo and Iltyd survive even today.
Time passes, landscape changes. This time, warriors come from the north, from the land of fire and ice. The year is 986 AD.
I saw the Norsemen on their dragon ships, bright colours shaped their scales. Fearsome men intent on war, plunder and destruction, at odds with the monastic settlement to which they sail. Soon the monastery at Bury Home is burned and ruined. Lingering tendrils of smoke is all that remains. The prayers of those within are now enduring memories in the minds of the villagers of Llangeneth.
Time passes, landscape changes. A new power now sits on the throne of this isle. The new overlords of Gower are Norman. The year is 1200 AD.
I am the Lord of Gower. My name is William de Brios. I build strong castles and churches to lay claim to my rights. Our castles lie empty now. They are claimed by sand and with no grass. All that remains here now are the haunted voices of the past and the spirits of the night, the very folk.
The very folk of Pennard Castle. The Prince of Pennard arrived home at his castle in Gower with his new wife. He had been given her hand in marriage by the Prince of North Wales as a reward for winning a battle on his behalf. As soon as they arrived, great celebrations began. It was a warm and calm evening. The castle shook with music and song. The guards above the gatehouse paced repeatedly. Suddenly, he paused, straining to listen to a strange sound drifting up the valley. The mysterious sound grew louder, and with it appeared a curious green light, flickering under the now orange moon.
Realizing that something unearthly was happening, the guard ran to tell the prince.
They listened as the bewitching melody grew louder and louder, drowning out the noise of the prince's party. The music sent the prince into a rage.
Who dares to spoil our celebrations on this great night? Come on, men, we'll spoil their song and fight with them, man or spirit.
Down to the valley they ran, where on a grassy knoll they saw a host of fairies dancing in the moonlight. The prince in his rage ran at the folk, cutting madly through thin air with his sword that was now glowing green. In his temper he ranted.
Away, very folk! This valley belongs to me.
Suddenly, one of the tiny fairies flew up and fluttered close to the prince's face.
Proud prince, you have attacked those who mean you no harm. May all of your village and castle be ruined.
At once a furious sandstorm blew up. Sand and wind stung the faces of the prince and his men, and they were filled with fear.
A curious feeling caused the prince to turn towards the sea. Squinting his eyes, he saw a great fairy castle upheld by glistening white waves.
The now hushed wind seemed to carry 1,000 sparkling lights.
As soon as he had seen it, the magical castle, stunning in its beauty, disappeared into the depths below.
The valley was peaceful again.
Time passes, landscape changes. Life is more settled in Gower. Queen Mary sits on the throne. The year is 1557 AD. It is the 26th of December in the year 1557, during the reign of Mary Tudor, Queen of England. Britain is at war with France. It is a stormy midwinter's day. Gales are raging. A French ship is beached on the sands of Oxford Bay.
The surviving sailors, wet and bedraggled, disembarked and head to the light of the rectory for help and salvation in Oxwich village.
A branch of the Mansell family were first on the spot. They lived at Oxwich Castle. The villagers, alerted by the priest, head to claim salvage of the ship's cargo. The spoils are shared between the villagers, the priest, the lord of the manor, and his steward.
Toast to good fortune!
News of the wreck reached Sir George Herbert, who himself had rights along the coast.
I come in the name of Sir George Herbert, Admiral under the Crown. I demand what is his.
Show us your warrant, and then we'll discuss it.
Sir Herbert, hearing of the situation, becomes incensed. He waits to hear mass and then sets forth for Oxwich, arriving at dawn at the priest's house.
What brings you to my door, Sir Herbert? Where's the cargo? I demand my goods.
And without attempt at discussion, he tried to physically wrestle the goods away from various houses, intimidating people with his men. In a brief time, he arrived at the castle itself.
I demand to see Sir Rice Mansell.
My husband is not at home. He is away on important business.
My lady, your son Edward has gone to the village.
Sir Rice Mansell is far from home, so Sir George Herbert and his men go looking for Sir Edward. They are sent on a wild goose chase around the village, hunting for Sir Edward.
In the meantime, Sir Edward is found and told of what has happened. He arrives at the castle, angry and armed, surrounded by his men.
My name is Sir Edward. I will defend this castle with my life. How dare you come to rob and invade it?
Edward's elderly aunt, Anne Mansell,
came to the gatehouse to try and reason with the irate and increasingly unreasonable men.
Stop! I implore you, do not resort to violence!
Unfortunately, the angry Herbert insulted Edward, and the two men were unable to resolve their differences. And in the confusion and skirmish, one of Herbert's men threw a stone and it unintentionally hit Anne on the forehead. She fell to the floor amidst cries of murder.
Murderer! I must write to the Star Chamber to demand justice for my aunt.
Lady Anne is gravely hurt. She lies in bed surrounded by her ladies for 4 days and dies on New Year's Day, 1558.
Time passes, landscape changes. Gower's cruel coast remains deadly and ungovernable. The year is 1883. The SS Agnes Jack. January the 27th, 1883 was one of the most tragic nights in the history of the South Glamorgan coast. Several ships were wrecked and 48 men lost their lives. The vessel, the SS Agnes Jack, was caught in one of the worst storms for 100 years and floundered off Portynan Head. There were 18 men aboard the ship. They all lost their lives. It was a cold and stark morning when at dawn the horrified villagers of Portynan witnessed the desperate crew of the Agnes Jack clinging to the rigging, fighting to survive. There was nothing anyone could do, and the powerless onlookers carried that sad morning heavily. A year later, Portynan Lifeboat Station was created. On the first anniversary of the disaster, the secretary of the lifeboat station, Charles Bevan, composed a poem in commemoration of the event, incredibly poignant as he experienced the disaster.
A sorrowful crowd stood on the shore. Tears filled many an eye, yet sympathy could not avail. They all were doomed to die. And good men offered prayers to God for those in sore distress, for all the powers of man were vain to rescue them from death. Huge waves overwhelmed them, and they sank, so close, so near the shore. The Agnes Jack and her brave crew shall plough the deep no more.
The words of his poem have been captured in the sea shanty SS Agnes Jack by Boys from the Hill.
It was a stormy morn, long ere the break of day, when cries of deep distress were across Portynan Bay. All the villagers quickly rose from bed and hurried to the strand, where those shattered spars and broken boats were washed upon the sand.
Time keeps passing, landscape keeps changing. The future unfolds before us, of which you are now a part.